PSA has absolutely screwed me over. After hours with police and even being forced to have a legally binding notary, I have had enough and must say my piece. As the disclaimer says, this video is my own personal perspective of the situation. In my own point of view, this is what happened, followed by my opinions on the situation. I won't give too many exact specifics for reasons, but it will be enough to get the gist of why I am so upset. Flashback noises. My friend is obsessed with Yu Yu Hakusho. They collect a ton of its merch, including the 2000s TCG. Didn't know there was a prior English TCG? Well, there was. They also collect dub voice actors' signatures on these cards, and they fetch a fairly decent price on eBay. It's a fairly small and niche collectible circle, but hey, that's what makes these things rare. In particular, they love Hiei, their husbando. He was voiced in English by Chuck Huber mostly, but an OVA was voiced by Kirk Thornton. These names will be important later, so please keep them in mind. Now, Chuck barely ever visits the West Coast anymore, so getting his signature can be difficult, which is why it took my friend years to get one. And in order to do so, they waited multiple hours in the sun for a Comic-Con, which had a $50 entry fee. Then they entered, had to wait another 3 hours in line for a signature, which also cost $50. The card itself isn't super pricey, sitting around $30 to $40 depending, but the time and effort and cost adds up, which is usually why cards, or anything really that's signed, ends up being way more than the object itself, right? As shown prior, the older Yu Yu cards that are signed go for upwards of $150 to $200. Despite all the expense and time, of course they were stoked. And prior to my PSA video, they hadn't really looked into grading much. So I guess this ends up kind of my fault, showing people that PSA grades non-Big 3 games. They were hesitant about sending off such a loved card, but really wanted to keep their prize signature safe, and I assured them it would be okay. Of course, I love getting cheaper options with a bulk order minimum of 20 PSA required, so I was happy to help. And oh boy do I wish I hadn't, as this has started almost a year downward spiral of frustration for me and for them. If you don't know by now, PSA is a grading company that will look at your cards or signed items and authenticate them. Authenticate, or auto, means that they make sure the signature and the item is real. This is super important for collectors who want a peace of mind that their valuables aren't just some kid scribbling on Pikachu. They give nice little numbers 1 to 10 on how good the card and or the signature look, and what you do is you package up your cards, you ship or drop them off to the company, and after a few weeks to months, you get them back safe and sealed in a nice hard case. For insurance reasons, you place how much value the card is, as PSA charges you more or less depending on how much the card is worth after grading. Now this will come up again. And before I continue, I will say when I submitted the cards, I did make a small mistake. There were 2 Hieis signed by Chuck. When you sub a PSA order with a signature to be authorized, there is a drop-down menu for who signed the card. For one, I put Chuck. For the other, I put Kirk. Both were Chuck, so this was my initial mistake. So, 2 months later, I get the order back. But keep the Yu Yu cards for my friend until Christmas as a gift. And I ruined Christmas, as I opened the returns to one of the cards, unable to be authenticated, and one said Kirk Thornton on it, but both were signed by Chuck. Giant Chuck sprawled on it. But hey, apparently Kirk spells his name with a C. And of course I found this out after already shipping it back to my friend and all of that good stuff, so it was a big problem. Now, why PSA decided one couldn't be determined to be Chuck, the one the drop-down menu had placed as Chuck, but the one I accidentally marked as Kirk was authenticated wrongly, I will never know. Now at first, I placed all the blame on me. I am not familiar with dub actors, I made a mistake. But if they couldn't determine the reality of the one signature and sent it unslabbed, why was the one clearly not Kirk's signature slabbed, graded, and authenticated? Isn't that the entire reason I gave them money, was to look at the cards and do that? Their signatures don't look anything alike. I'm literally paying you to look at this signature and authenticate it. Feeling awfully bad for sealing their prized, signed in-person card in a wrong slab, I reached out to PSA, who, initially, were very helpful. As soon as I explained the situation, they sent me a return slip and said they would fix the issue for free, simple, easy, fast. Trusting this with another mistake of mine I regret to this day. Initially, all seemed swell. They fixed the name on the slab, resealed, sent pictures of the slab, and updated the info on my order page within like a week. Incredibly fast for PSA. I was very happy they fixed a mistake and I could hand it to my friend as the card should be a tad later than expected, but at least correct and safe. Unfortunately, it then sat at PSA. After a few, it showed a FedEx label had been created, but not shipped. Now, as someone who buys and sells and utilizes places like Mercari, eBay, Amazon, etc., I'm aware that that means they digitally created a label, but hadn't actually shipped it yet. Okay, I'm thinking, that's not super unusual, lots of people do that. But then it never ships. Months go by. During this time, I am in contact with the same employee who helped me get the relabel, who assures me they are looking into the card's whereabouts. What deeply concerns me is this time it is on the app that the card's order has disappeared. It's just gone and won't show up when clicked. But the cert was still present and it showed up on desktop, so no biggie, right? Like, it's maybe something with the app? How wrong was I? Eventually, I get a new email from PSA Claims. And they state that the card was lost by FedEx, and I'll need to sign a claims form to receive compensation. So after months of waiting, they say it's all FedEx's fault. So I reach out to FedEx. And who say what's expected? FedEx never had the package, and the packing slip being generated does not equal a package being shipped. PSA assures me that they have footage of the package being given to FedEx. I assure them that saying that isn't the same as proof. It's on their company to make sure the items people pay for get shipped out. They seem to disagree, and this begins a much more lengthy claims process. As stated, I've been a eBay, Amazon, Mercari seller, etc. for years. I've had accounts selling items on them since most of the sites started practically. I know how this goes, or should go. On the initial sub, which PSA accepted to grade, I had placed the card's value to me at $200. Between the difficulty in acquiring the signature, the personal value, and honestly just other sellers online, that felt very fair. Then PSA accepted that amount when they took my submission in. However, PSA seemed to think that the signed and graded card was only worth $75, and the grading fee included. By the way, the card alone, low end plus the cost of signature, is more than $75, not to mention the scarcity of both together when graded. I was so fed up at this point, I was just going to say okay and roll over, just give me the money. But then I read the claim file. The claim file I had to do needed to be notarized. They required me to do a claim that was notarized, signed, and legally binding BS that honestly, I'm no lawyer, and they said they wouldn't even pay for it. They also kept dodging my questions regarding why they, who are at fault, wouldn't just do a refund or even emphasize a small amount with their fudge up. Of course, all this was in the fine print, they say, right? But there's no copy of this claim form that I can find on their site, but whatever. I fill out the claims form. They emailed it to me, right? Whatever. I'll go and get it notarized. I'll spend my own money and time to go out and do this, even though you messed up. On top of this, I go to my local police and file a police report since the claim has a segment for it, just to have all my angles covered, and I talked to a police officer and filed a report over an hour. Truthfully, I wasn't expecting the PD to be so nice considering this item is low value, but they were really cool, walked me through the process and seemed sympathetic.
わかります。
I think it's because I saw some Shonen Jump stickers on cars in the PD driveway, but, you know, I shouldn't assume. I also then went to my local AAA, All-Stars, and got the silly thing notarized. Now during this, I'm still emailing PSA back and forth, and they are refusing, straight up refusing to answer questions. See, in one email they mentioned after the claims I need to sign further paperwork for the refunded amount agreed on. I kept asking them what this paperwork was, and they would either outright ignore that I asked or told I would know after the notarized form. So they essentially, and in my own opinion, extorted me. Unless I signed this form and had it notarized, which cost money, I wouldn't even be told the next step to get a refund for a product they either lost or straight up stole from me, and this pissed me off to such an extent I went Karen and asked for a manager. The person I was talking to was beating around the bush and wouldn't fill me in on what this next step of the signatures would be. It was around this time I saw they had removed the image of the card from their website, including changing my completed orders page of the Misauthenticated card to their corrected slab. They literally changed the card so it seemed they never misauthenticated it and removed the cert number completely on the fudged one. Even on the initial order they messed up that had shown the wrongly authenticated Kirk slab, they changed it. while I was doing the above to be the corrected slab, they couldn't find. They literally went through their website and changed it so it looked like they never messed up. After sending the notarization, that's when I got the final form they absolutely refused to tell me about. I won't post it because I'm unsure legally how that works, but in essence it's an NDA where if I sign it, I'm not even allowed to talk about the situation at all. At all. Complete NDA. Utter bollocks. They were essentially stating that if I wanted even the paltry sum back, I would need to never talk about their mess up. Of course, since I'm making this video, obviously I refuse to sign it. So, just to give a too long read later on the events. PSA refuses to authenticate one signature from Chuck. PSA authenticates Chuck's signature as Kirk's and sends it to me. It is not Kirk's signature, meaning they didn't do their job that I paid them to do. They take the card back and fix the issue. They never ship the card. They remove the card from their online services. They try to blame FedEx despite only ever making the label. They offer me far less than agreed upon value of the card when submitted, but Lord knows if it was worth more, they would have charged me out the butt, as Pokemon collectors will tell you. They practically forced me to pay for a notary, they refused to answer questions about the process, and then they want me to sign what amounts to a non-disclosure agreement just to get back the money spent to use their service in the first place that they didn't actually do the service for. Imagine if an online retailer did this. Imagine buying an item from Amazon or eBay, they never ship it, then make you get a legally binding statement and sign a non-disclosure just to get half of your money back. That would never, ever fly. To end my rant, why would I send money to a company who wouldn't even do their job in the first place? Look at these two signatures, Chuck versus Kirk's, and tell me they look the same. At all. Why did I pay $30-some plus shipping for PSA to not do their jobs? They clearly didn't even look at the card, and honestly that puts the entire company into the poop tier for me. Why would I ever trust a company when anyone can send in a scribble and they will authorize it? Why not sign some toilet paper as Michael Jordan and get a PSA 9 to flip on eBay? Clearly PSA isn't checking the signatures closely. Hope all of you with authorized cards you got on a secondary market feel real strongly about the signatures being real, because personally and in my opinion, I would not. To me, this makes their entire company pointless. Let's take a look at some of the other wixoss cards a friend sent in. They gave a 10 to a card with a clear hollow print line, a 10 to this completely sun-bleached card, but a 7 to a practically pristine card? This makes absolutely zero sense. There's no accountability with the grading, no real metric, and after the situation with the signature authorization, I am starting to wonder if they just throw darts at a board when deciding to give numbers and authentications out. For me, I am done with PSA unless they do something about the situation, which I doubt they will because they told me essentially to go F myself. I'm currently trying Beckett and testing Tag, which I love because of how transparent the grading was, but they don't do Japanese wixoss, so it's limited, and also, at this point, I am pretty worried about sending any of my cards out because who knows if I'll ever get them back. On a plus side, Chuck did end up re-signing through mail my friend's card, and they have it now on display. Not graded. They're completely done with grading. They're pretty still distraught because they'd had that card since like 2005 or something like that. But anyway, if anyone has advice or been in a similar situation, please let me know, because everyone else I've talked to who uses PSA has said there isn't a case where they've gotten these kind of problems. They especially seem confused by the notary and NDA aspects, and because of the people I've talked to who have graded way more cards than I do, the NDA thing has really thrown them through a loop, and it makes me wonder realistically if that was because they didn't want people knowing they had authorized or what. I don't really know. I can't really assume that. For all I know, it's just sitting in their warehouse somewhere lost. But I feel a little sick talking about this. But thank you for watching. Stick around for my next video about grading, where I'm going to try Beckett and Tag and kind of compare how they look to my PSA subs and how I feel about their process. A little worried again, but I'm never using PSA again. I literally canceled my subscription as soon as they told me that I would have to find a NDA. I'm never going to sign that crap.